A man came to see me in my hotel room in San Francisco 3 years ago. He had been studying with me for over a year. He had read every book, attended every lecture within 200 miles, practiced the techniques nightly, and yet he told me nothing. Not one single desire had come to pass. I asked him to describe his practice. He told me he visualized every morning for 20 minutes. He revised every night before sleep. He repeated his affirmations throughout the day. He did everything I had taught him to do. And how does it feel? I asked him, when you do these things. It feels like work, he said, hard work. But I persist, Neville. I persist just as you taught. I looked at him and I said, my friend, you have misunderstood everything. The moment he left my room that day and stopped all his techniques, stopped his visualizing, stopped his affirming, stopped his effort entirely, his desire came to pass within 1 week. 1 week. After a year of failure. Pause now. Tonight I tell you what I told him. And I tell you this because most of you listening to me now are making the same error. You are trying, and the very act of trying is what prevents the thing from coming. I will show you tonight why this is so and what you must do instead. But listen carefully, for this teaching contradicts everything the world has told you about effort and achievement. You must understand first what you are doing when you try. When you sit down to visualize and it feels like effort, what state are you in? You are in the state of one who does not have, the state of wanting. And wanting, my friend, is a state of consciousness. It perpetuates itself. I have told you before, but I will tell you again. You cannot serve two masters. You are either in the state of having or the state of wanting. These are not two sides of the same coin. They are two entirely different states of being. And the state you occupy determines what you experience in this world. Now listen carefully. Every technique I have ever taught you, every method, every practice is given for one purpose only, to shift you into the state of the wish fulfilled, not to get you there tomorrow, not to build a bridge to that state, but to occupy it now in this moment as a present fact. But what do most do? They use the technique to try to get what they want. They visualize to make something happen. They affirm to force a result, and in doing so, they remain in the state of not having. The very effort betrays the state. Pause. Let me tell you of a woman who wrote to me many years ago from a small town in Texas. She had been practicing what she believed was my teaching for nearly 2 years. 2 years. She wanted to manifest a home of her own. She was living with her sister, dependent, unhappy. Every night she visualized the home. She saw the rooms, felt the textures, walked through the doorways in her imagination. She did everything she thought was required, but nothing came. She wrote to me in desperation. She told me she had faith. She told me she believed. But I could see from her letter that what she called faith was actually hope. Hope is not faith. Hope looks to the future. Faith rests in the present. I wrote back and asked her one question. I asked, when you visualize this home, how does it feel? She responded immediately. She said it felt wonderful while she was doing it. But the moment she opened her eyes, the feeling vanished and she was back in her sister's house, discouraged and afraid. There was the error. She was using the visualization to escape her present reality, not to establish a new one. She was trying to feel better, not to feel it real. And the moment the technique ended, she returned to her true state, the state of lack. I told her to stop visualizing entirely. I told her to stop all techniques. Instead, I gave her one instruction. I said, live this day as the woman who owns her home, not the woman trying to get a home, the woman who has it. At first she resisted. She said, but Neville, I do not have it. How can I live as though I do? I said, you live as though you do by assuming you do. Assumption is not pretense. It is the act of occupying a state. Occupy the state of the woman with her own home, and that state will externalize itself. She stopped writing to me for 3 months. I thought she had given up. But then a letter came. She told me that within 6 weeks of stopping all visualization, an aunt she barely knew passed away and left her a small house in the very town where she lived. 6 weeks. The moment she stopped trying to get it, it came. Now you see the principle. The trying is the error, not because effort is wrong, but because trying implies you do not have. And if you do not have it in consciousness, you cannot have it in fact. Consciousness is the only reality. But hold this thought, my friend. There is a specific moment, a precise psychological act, that transforms assumption from mere thought into creative power. Most who hear me miss this moment entirely. They assume, but they do not complete the creative act. I will tell you that moment in just a few minutes, for without it, assumption remains sterile. With it, assumption hardens into fact. This brings me to the second error, and this one is more subtle still. You have heard me speak of assumption, and many have misunderstood me. They think assumption means to repeat a statement over and over until the subconscious accepts it. Let me be plain. That is not assumption. That is affirmation. An affirmation without the feeling of fulfillment is worthless. Assumption is the act of occupying a state. You do not affirm your way into a state. You enter it by feeling, and once entered, you rest there. Most of you who hear me understand that assumption creates reality. You know this. But what you do not understand is the Sabbath. You assume, and then you continue to labor. You visualize Monday, affirm Tuesday, revise Wednesday, imagine Thursday. You never rest. And without rest, there is no creation. Listen to me. The Sabbath is not a day of the week. The Sabbath is a psychological principle. In the book of Genesis, you are told that God created for 6 days and rested on the seventh. And it was the rest, my friend, the rest that sanctified the creation. Without the Sabbath, the creation is not complete. You are God, I have told you this. You are the operant power. When you assume the wish fulfilled, you have done your work, that is your 6 days. But then you must rest. You must cease from mental labor. You must enter the Sabbath, the psychological rest in the knowledge that it is done. But what do most do? They assume once, and then they immediately begin to work again. They check the outer world for signs. They wonder if it is working. They repeat the technique to make sure. They do not rest. And without rest, the seed never grows. Pause, I learned this principles myself many years ago when I wanted my discharge from the army. It was 1943. I was stationed in Camp Oak, Louisiana. I wanted out. I wanted it desperately. But the rules were clear. No one was being discharged. The war was on. It was impossible by all outer reasoning. I went to see Abdullah, my teacher. I told him I wanted to be discharged. He looked at me and said, "You are discharged. Not you will be. You are." I said, "Abdullah, I am not discharged. I am here in uniform standing before you," he said. "That is because you are still in the state of being in the army. Assume you are discharged and walk into assumption." So I did. I imagined myself home in New York. I felt the reality of it. I slept in that assumption. And then, my friend, I stopped thinking about it. I did not labor over it. I did not check each day to see if orders had come. I simply lived from the state of being discharged. 9 days later, the impossible happened. My discharge papers came through. 9 days. But here is what you must understand. During those 9 days, I did not wonder if it was working. I did not repeat the visualization daily to reinforce it. I assumed it once with feeling, and then I rested in that assumption. That rest was the Sabbath. That rest was the creative act completing itself. You see, the interval between assumption and manifestation is not a time for you to labor. It is a time for you to rest. It is the time when consciousness, having accepted the assumption, begins to rearrange the outer world to match it. But it cannot do this if you keep interfering with your doubt, with your checking, with your effort to make it happen. Pause, the farmer plants a seed and walks away. You have heard me use this example before, but I will use it again because it is perfect. The farmer does not return every hour to dig up the seed and examine it. He does not stand over the soil commanding it to grow. He plants, and then he trusts the creative power of the earth to bring forth the harvest. He rests. Your consciousness is that soil. Plant the assumption, then rest. Trust the interval. Now here is where the lecture turns, my friend. I have shown you two errors, trying and laboring without rest. But there is a third error that undoes even those who have grasped the first two. And this error is so subtle, so invisible to the one making it, that most never see it. They rest in the assumption for days, even weeks, and then they commit this single act that destroys everything. I must tell you what that act is now, for it is the difference between those who see results and those who remain forever waiting. Now, the third error, and this is the one that defeats even those who understand the first two. You assume, you rest, but then you look for evidence. You scan your world for signs that it is coming. You check your bank account, your phone, your circumstances. You search for proof that your assumptions is hardening into fact. And the very act of searching is proof you do not believe. Make no mistake. Faith is the evidence of things not seen, not the evidence you frantically search for in the visible world. Faith is the inner conviction that it is already done, regardless of what the senses report. Now I must insist on this, my friend, for it is the place where most fail. The outer world is always reflecting your former states. Always. What you see today is the result of what you assumed yesterday, last week, last month. If you judge your assumption by what you see now, you will always doubt, for now is showing you the past. Do not let anyone, including yourself, talk you out of this principle. The visible world is the past made visible. Your assumption is the future taking form in consciousness now. You must live by faith, not by sight. You must rest in the unseen assumption until it externalizes itself. And it will, I promise you this. An assumption, though false, if persisted in, will harden into fact. But you persist not by effort. You persist by resting in it as true. Pause. A man came to me in Los Angeles in 1961. He wanted a promotion at his firm. He had been passed over 3 times. He was bitter, resentful. He had tried everything. He visualized, he affirmed, he even tried to manipulate his superiors with mental influence. I said to him, "You are trying to change them, but the world is yourself pushed out. You do not change them, you change self." He did not understand, I said. "Assume you have the promotion. Not that you will get it, that you have it. And rest in that assumption without looking for signs." He tried. But every day he went to work, he looked for evidence. He watched his boss for hints. He listened to conversations for clues. He checked the bulletin board for announcements. He could not rest. Finally, in frustration, he stopped. He said to himself, "I give up. I am going to assume I have the promotion and forget about it entirely." That was the turning point. The moment he stopped looking, the moment he ceased from the mental labor of searching for proof, his consciousness was free to do its work. 3 weeks later, he was promoted. Not because he stopped caring, but because he stopped trying. He entered the Sabbath. Pause. Now you see the pattern. Remember what I told you at the beginning, that the trying is what prevents the thing from coming. Now you see why. All 3 errors stem from one root. You are living from the senses instead of from the assumption. You try because the senses say you do not have. You labor because the senses demand effort. You seek evidence because the senses require proof. But I tell you, consciousness is the only reality. The senses are not causative, they are effects. And if you continue to make them your cause, you will remain in bondage to them. The world will tell you that effort produces results, that hard work brings success, that persistence means repeating the same action until you break through. I tell you they are wrong. Effort in consciousness is not repetition of technique. It is occupying the state. And once occupied, the state does the work, not you. The state you occupy is the cause. The state determines all. When you stop trying, you have shifted states. When you stop laboring, you have entered the Sabbath. When you stop seeking evidence, you have entered faith. And in that state, the thing must come. It has no choice. For the outer world is compelled to conform to the inner state. Now many will ask me, "Neville, does this mean I do nothing? Does this mean I sit idle and wait?" No. Listen carefully. Cessation from labor is not passivity. It is not giving up on your desire. It is not detachment or indifference. There is no such thing as detachment in the law of assumption. Put that word from your mind. Do not be misled by the teachers who tell you to detach from your desire. They have not understood the law. You do not detach. You fulfill. You enter the state of fulfillment and rest there. Cessation means you have done the only work that matters. You have assumed. And having assumed, you now live from that assumption naturally, without strain, without force. If you have assumed you are the man with the promotion, you do not try to act promoted. You simply are. And being it, you move through your day as that man would move, not as effort, as nature. Pause, but before I tell you how to apply this tonight, my friend, there is one final piece. It is the piece that separates those who see their world respond in 2 weeks from those who practice for years and see nothing. There is a specific moment, a threshold you must cross, where the assumption passes from your conscious mind into the creative depths of consciousness. Most never find that threshold. They assume in the waking state and wonder why nothing happens. I will give you that threshold now, and you must use it tonight. The assumption externalizes itself through what I have called the bridge of incidents. But you do not see the bridge while you are building it. You do not watch for it. You do not try to construct it. You simply walk forward in your assumption, and the bridge appears beneath your feet. Let me give you the application now. Tonight, when you retire to your bed, you will do this. First, you will enter that drowsy state, that state akin to sleep. You know this state. It is the state between waking and sleeping, where the conscious mind begins to recede and the subconscious becomes impressionable. Second, in that state, you will assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Not the wish fulfilled. You will feel what you would feel if desire were already a present fact. You will not visualize striving toward it. You will feel resting in it. Third, you will not strain to hold this feeling. You will not effort to maintain it. You will simply rest in it as you would rest in any natural fact. The way you rest in the knowledge that you are in your bed, that you are breathing, that you exist. And fourth, you will fall asleep in that assumption. You will let sleep take you while you are still feeling it real. For sleep is the door through which the assumption passes into manifestation. That is all. You do it once with feeling, and then you leave it alone. Do not return to it the next night to reinforce it unless it feels natural to do so. Do not check your world the next day for evidence. Do not discuss it. Do not question it. Do not examine it. You have planted the seed. Now rest. And I promise you this. The moment you truly rest, the moment you stop trying, the thing will come. Not because you have earned it, not because you deserve it, but because you have assumed it. And assumption, my friend, is the law. I have seen this proven thousands of times. In my own life, in the lives of those who have come to me. The moment they stopped, it came. The moment they ceased from labor, the Sabbath brought forth the creation. This is not a figure of speech. This is law. This is the creative principle by which all things are made. And it works not by effort, but by assumption and now I tell you, my friend, the secret you have been searching for is not hidden. It has been in front of you all along. You do not need more techniques. You do not need more knowledge. You do not need to try harder. You need to stop. The moment you stop trying, you have shifted states. The moment you stop laboring, you have entered the Sabbath. The moment you stop seeking evidence, you have entered faith. And in that state, the thing is already yours. This is not philosophy. This is not metaphor. This is the creative principle by which all things are made. Assumption is the act. Rest is the completion. The trying keeps you in the state of not having. The cessation places you in the state of having. And from that state, the world must conform. It is law. Tonight, when you retire to your bed, do this just once. Enter that drowsy state, that state akin to sleep. Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Not the wish itself, but the wish fulfilled. Feel it as though it were already a present fact. And then, my friend, rest in it. Let sleep take you while you are still feeling it real. Do not return to it tomorrow night to reinforce it unless it feels natural. Do not check your world for signs. Do not question whether it is working. You have assumed. That is the creative act. Now rest, and let the Sabbath bring forth the creation. If you have been trying for weeks, for months, for years, and nothing has come, I tell you the reason. You have been in the wrong state. You have been in the state of trying to get, not the state of having. Stop now, enter the state, rest there. The world is yourself pushed out. What you assume in consciousness, the world must reflect in fact. Imagining creates reality, and the imagination that creates is not the strained effort of the conscious mind. It is the effortless assumption of the state. Go now and rest in the Sabbath of your fulfilled desire. May your assumption harden into fact while you sleep. May you wake to find that consciousness has done its perfect work. I have given you the law. Now prove it in your own experience. Until we meet again, my friend, live in the end.